Hello, today how your memory works. A reading from The Switching Hour by Damaris Young. How to improve your memory and make your own personalised pick-up pairs game. Today's video is all about the memory. If you think about it, us humans are all just loads of memories put together, because memory entails everything you do. When you get up in the morning and you put your clothes on and brush your teeth, when you know who you are, it's all to do with memory. We are all just a collection of our memories to some extent. We can't underestimate the importance of our memories because they make us who we are and also allow us to actively participate in the world around us. So what is memory? Well, memory is actually the process of encoding, storing and retrieving experiences and knowledge in your brain. Memories aren't stored in a particular part of your brain. There's many regions used, and in fact, different parts of your brain are responsible for different types of memory. The hippocampus is the most important part of the brain, probably, for memories, and scientists think it's responsible for putting different memories together. There's so many different types of memory, but let's look at the basic types. Short-term memory. These are things that have just happened. Short-term memories can progress to becoming long-term memories if we make a conscious effort to retain and remember the information. Long-term memories. These can range from days to years. And our long-term memory can potentially store an almost unlimited amount of information. But our long-term memories aren't infallible. When recalling them, sometimes other information that other people might give us or external factors might make our long-term memories impaired. So they're not always reliable. Long-term memories can be divided into explicit memories and implicit memories. Explicit memories are those we consciously remember, and they can be subdivided yet again into episodic memories, which are things like an event, like a wedding you went to. Semantic memories, so that's general knowledge, like the capital of England is London, or what a cat looks like. Autobiographical memories, which are a combination of the two, and spatial memories, such as remembering the way to get home. Implicit memories, or procedural memories, on the other hand, are things that we don't have to consciously think about. They almost seem automatic, like how to ride a bike, for instance. Memories are created by neurons firing in our brains, creating or changing all the networks of connections. Human brains aren't fully developed at birth, and that's probably why we don't remember being a baby. But as our brain develops through early childhood, so does our capacity to remember. And it's important to remember that memories are not static. They're continually in flux, getting either weaker or stronger or distorted over time. It's important to not think of your brain as a filing cabinet, which is quite simplistic, but more like a complex web. It's more like a giant interconnected spider diagram where all the different bits help and work with one another. If you think about remembering a car, your brain works to retrieve many different bits of information from many different regions. All the memories about what a car is, the sound it makes, how it smells, how it looks, its functions, all of the different aspects are compiled together into a cohesive single memory so that you can recognise, hey, that's a car. Our brains contain about 86 billion neurons, and each of those form about 1,000 connections with other neurons. Add these together and suddenly you've got more than 1 trillion connections working to increase your brain's storage capacity. It's been estimated that the human brain's memory storage capacity is around 2.5 million gigabytes. So if you compare your brain to a typical hard drive, it would be able to store 3 million hours of high-resolution television. Wow. Some strange brain odysseys. Number 1, déjà vu, which is French for already seen. Sometimes it feels as though something you do has already happened before, and that is because the information bypasses the short-term memory, it's thought, and goes straight to the long-term memory. Amnesia is a loss of memory that can occur from a brain injury or damage to the brain. Alzheimer's, not to be confused with amnesia, is also responsible for some memory loss. It's a form of dementia, and it often happens in older age. Hyperthermesia is a condition that leads people to be able to remember an abnormally large number of their life experiences in vivid detail. So there you have it, a whistle-stop guide to your memory, and we're going to look at some of the ways that you can improve your memory after today's reading. All about a creature that takes people's dreams, and then 3 days later, the memory of those people is completely erased. The Switching Hour by Damaris Young. Chapter 1. The clouds have lost their way. I dived down into the deep part of the water, like the eels had taught me. I turned into the murky depths, into the swish and sway of the lake. The reeds, the green stalks whisper soft against my skin, the air ballooning in my chest. I searched for a rock with my feet. With my toes, I clamped on tight while I unhooked the net from my weight belt. I made slow, small movements, careful not to ripple the cold water. A flash of silver in the shadows, and I had the lake bream in my sights. A single fish. With a flick of my wrist, I spun the net and closed it tight. The small fish entangled and fighting inside. Finally, holding the net with both hands, I shot upwards to the surface, where I spat out lake water with its grit and fishy taste and pulled clean air into my lungs. I squinted upwards to read the sun. It had fallen towards the west, but it was still hot enough to suck the water off my face. I swam closer to the shoreline and reached down to the bottom of the lake until my toes dug into the mud. The net grew heavy as I walked out of the water. My pet goat greeted me with a wriggle of his tail. He headbutted me hard enough to almost tip me back into the lake. "Careful, Tao," I scolded. He'd kept himself busy while I'd been fishing. Green moss poked out of the corner of his beard. He must have climbed the boulders that lined the lake to get the plants that grew in the crevices. There was so little else to eat since the drought had taken over our once green country, leaving it cracked and parched. I searched for the clouds. Even a whisper of haze could be enough to mean the rains were here at last, but there was nothing beyond the great empty blue. "The clouds have lost their way," I said to Tao. "Maybe tomorrow the rains will find us." Nearby, a spadefoot croaked from its burrow hole. The toads liked the cool of the evening. I heard the impatience in its voice. My cotton tunic was hanging on a needlethorn tree. I pulled it on without waiting for my skin to dry. My curly hair dripped water, so I shook my head until I felt dizzy. The spadefoot croaked again, louder this time. Then more toads joined in until the rattle of their song almost shook the earth under my feet. It would soon be the switching hour, where day traded places with night. A panic flutter woke in my stomach. "Let's go home, Tao," I called out with a fierceness that I knew he understood. We were running out of time. The fish bucket bumped against my legs as I ran through the long yellow grass. It grew as high as my shoulder, and I stomped my feet to scare away the orange-bellied snakes that liked to hide there. I raced Tao along the path, skittering stones beneath my feet, until we got to the pastures where 2 older goats grazed. Zola, the colour of milk, Ella, the colour of honey. I whistled with 2 fingers in my mouth, shrill as the shriek of an egret. The goats trotted over, kicking up dust. The grazing grass had all but gone. Tao danced around them, just out of range of Zola's huge, curved horns. "We have to hurry," I said. I threaded twine through their leather collars and pulled them into a walk. "Through the gate, Zola," I coaxed, leading them on. "Faster," I willed them, but the goats are stubborn creatures and will only go as quickly as they want. I tugged on the twine and tried to get them both into a trot. The switching hour had begun. The sun was setting behind the forest when I caught sight of smoke curling upwards from behind a thicket of needlethorn trees, their branches black against the sky. It was almost dark now, and I could already see the first pinpricks of stars. The rising tide of night had washed away the day. Granny Uma was waiting for me by the cottage door. "You're late, Amaya," she said, her voice scratched with worry. She grabbed the harness rope out of my hand and pushed me towards the open door and safety. Chapter 2. You're lucky to be on this side of the door. While Granny Uma locked Zola and Ella in the goat shed, I sneaked Tao into the cottage. After being outside all day, the smell of paraffin lamps made my nose twitch. Tao went straight to the rug near the hearth and curled up. He snuffled and closed his eyes. "Lazy goat," I muttered, tweaking on his tail. I dropped the fish bucket onto the table with a thump A chuckling noise sounded from under the table. I peeked underneath. Caleb sat plump and upright on the kitchen floor, gnawing on a rind of pumpkin skin. He dropped as soon as he saw me looking and stretched upwards, clenching and unclenching his hands. I bent down and picked him up, pretending to groan with the weight of him. "You're getting fat on pumpkin, small brother. Soon you'll turn into a pumpkin yourself." I squeezed him tight and laughed. Caleb had a whooping laugh, full of belly sound, and he smelled of trampled grass and soil. I wiped the dirt from his hands. "You need a bath," I said, as he wriggled out of my arms. The cottage door closed with enough force to shake the dust from the thatch. Even with her grey hair and tired eyes, Granny Uma was the toughest person I knew. It's better to just get out of her way when she's angry. I went to latch up the windows, locking the outside out. It didn't take long. There was only one window in each of the 3 rooms, all set deep into the thick stone walls. Once the windows were secured, I went and stood next to Granny Uma, ready for the door-locking routine. Granny Uma turned the heavy key until the lock clunked into position. She left it in place so that it stuck out of the door like a silver arrow. "Now make sure the deadbolt is secured." She muttered the words to herself like an incantation, shoving the bolt along its fixture. Its squeak made my teeth itch. Granny Uma turned to face me. "Check it's locked, Amaya," she said. "Always make sure the door is secured." I can see it is. Why should I have to check it, I thought. But I did what she said. I rattled the door handle, turning it this way and that. It's locked. "Would you stake your life on it?" I could sense Granny Uma's eyes boring into me. I glared at the door. Yes, definitely. Granny Uma had insisted on this nightly routine ever since the wells had started to dry up and the drought had taken hold. It always felt silly to keep checking the door when I knew it was shut tight. It was just another thing to get used to, since me and Caleb had moved in with her. I stifled a yawn and Granny Uma shot me a look with dagger-sharp eyes. Her hair had untied itself from its braid. "You're lucky to be on this side of the door, Amaya. You left it very late." "I'm sorry." "It's not enough to be sorry. You know the dangers. You're 12 summers old." Granny Uma's voice splintered into an almost sob that hurt more than words could. "What if you hadn't made it back in time?" I could only look at the floor. "Do you think it's a game, staying out as late as you want?" she said. "Badako will snatch you away if you're not careful." I waited until the others had left the lake. So many people fish there now, there's hardly any fish left. It's easier to catch them when it's quiet, I said. But no matter how hungry we were, I knew Granny Uma wouldn't care about the fish. It wasn't a good enough excuse. The drought had awoken Badako, a creature that stole away children at night to eat their dreams. You had to make sure you were safely behind locked doors after the switching hour, otherwise you'd become its prey. Or so Granny Uma said. Mama had whispered that it was just a story. Granny Uma clicked her tongue. "Help me with supper," she said, "and don't waste time bringing the goats home if you're late. Your life is far more precious than a goat's." I glanced at Tao, curled up next to the fire. He looked like a mud ball, his white fur all dirty. When Ella rejected him for being birthed sickly small, I had loved him and raised him up strong. "Hurry, Amaya," Granny Uma called over from the kitchen table. From the bucket, I grabbed the bream and laid it out on the wooden board on the table. Selecting the filleting knife, I carved the fish open in one smooth movement. The inside spilled out. I slopped the pink and white worm-like entrails into the chum bucket. The knife was sharp and I chopped off the dead-eyed head with one slice. I quickly closed the wooden top of the bucket so the smell wouldn't fill the room. I cut the fish into thumb-sized chunks that would cook easily. I wiped the knife with the washcloth before putting it back in the high-up wood block away from Caleb's grabbing hands. Fish scales glittered like pearl dust under my fingernails. I waggled them at Caleb, but he tried to bite my fingers. "Leave my fingers in one piece," I laughed. "Chomp on your pumpkin instead." All of his tiny teeth had shoved their way out of his gums, and he gnawed on anything he could grab. Tao had learned to stay out of his way. "The stew is bubbling," Granny Uma said. "Bring the fish over, Amaya." She dipped the ladle into the iron pot on the stove and slurped a taste. She tutted. "More pepper." While Granny Uma crushed up a pepper clove, I carried the fish pieces over to the pot and tossed them in, watching them disappear under the stew skin. "Is that enough, Granny Uma?" It barely covered the bottom of the large iron pot. "There's porridge to go with it." The thick, gloopy liquid sputtered in a pot on the other hob. Granny Uma sprinkled pepper into the stew, the powerful smell swirling with the steam, masking the stink of paraffin. "So the lake was busy today?" she asked. I nodded.
Too many people, not enough fish. I slammed the empty board onto the table, making Tao jump in his sleep. Granny Uma wiped her hands on her apron. Amaya, the lake is for everyone. The drought affects all things. People, animals, the birds and the trees all suffer. Only by working together can we survive. The lake levels are lower than yesterday, I said pointedly. The well had started to draw silt along with water. It wouldn't be long until it all dried up, completely, unless the rains appeared soon. Granny Uma sucked her teeth. She didn't say anything more about it, but her mouth went taut as a fishing line. I searched for Caleb. He'd clambered up on the stool, stretching for the stew ladle. "Come here, pumpkin boy." I picked him up and lugged him over to the fireside, where I sat down on the hearthrug and leaned against Tao's warm side, his snores rumbling against my back. Caleb wanted to get my bracelet off my wrist, so I unhooked it and dangled it above him. He laughed, reaching up, trying to catch it. I'd made it with wool dyed blue, green and black, the colours of the sky and the grasslands, and black for the forest that bordered the fields where Zola and Ella grazed. Granny Uma passed me 2 bowls of stew and porridge. My stomach grumbled. There was barely enough in the bowls to feed a mouth. I blew on a spoonful before giving it to Caleb. I couldn't help laughing as he chomped on the wooden spoon with his new teeth, his face scrunched up in concentration. The wicker chair creaked as Granny Uma sat down. "When you didn't come home, I thought Badako had taken you away. Do you want me to suffer the loss of my only granddaughter as well as my daughter?" Her voice cracked and she hacked a cough. "I'm sorry," I said. And this time I meant it. Granny Uma missed Mama as much as we did.
Will Badako get Amaya and erase the memory of her? You'll have to read on it to find out. Time now, though, to see ways to improve your memory. People say that meditating and mindfulness improve your working memory. Also, diet can be really important. Certain fatty acids, such as omega-3 fish oils, are supposed to be really good for you. Also, vitamin B12.
Research has also found that good sleep and exercising can help enhance recall
Finally, a
and
key
memory.
way is to exercise your brain, whether it's doing brain training, puzzles, taking up a new language, instrument or discipline. Mind mapping is another good technique. Putting what you're trying to learn on the middle of a page and drawing a spider diagram around it with visual cues of words helping you revise.
And pictures.
Very, very good for revision. Repetition is a good way to learn things. People do that with their times tables a lot. Also, teaching other people stuff makes it go in your brain more. Memory games are a great way to improve your memory, and there are a lot out there, but I thought it might be fun for us to make our own personalised pick-up pairs game. All you need is a piece of cardboard and some pens. You need a ruler, and first we're going to rule out our cards. A good way to get lines that are parallel is to just move them along a ruler's length so that you know that they're straight, and I'm going to just do that on this card here. So I've done a ruler's width, so I didn't need to measure anything, and now I'm going to cut all these out. You can make your cards whatever size you want, but I'm going for these little squares. So I've cut out 24 little squares of card, and they all need to be identical on one side. So I'm going to leave one side plain. And then on the other side, you can draw pairs. Now you could draw identical pairs that people need to match up and remember where they are. Or you could draw funny pairs like your mum and your dad. Or if you've got a pet, you could do your pet and their pet food. Or you could do opposites, hot and cold. So think of 12 different pairs if you've got 24 cards, or however many pairs you need to fill up your cards, and then get drawing. So I finished drawing lots of pairs. So you could draw mum and dad like that. You could draw your pet, as I said, and then where they live, for instance, or their pet food, or maybe you've got 2 pets, your head teacher and your school maybe, or your class teacher and your head teacher. Or you could do pairs that naturally go together. You don't have to make it things from your life. It could be like salt and pepper, or bucket and spade. Or you could do opposites, Cookie and Jake, perhaps your favourite characters from your favourite book, or opposites, there we go, Rainy and Sunny. You can have real fun drawing all the pairs and making them personal to your life if you want. And then you can do lots of brain training, whoever you want to play with, or you could play just on your own and see how good your memory is when you try and match pairs up. Dad and Sonny, I don't think so. I'm going to keep going at this. But that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe and spread the word and keep training your memory. Bye.